PhazePlays here with a build guide for a minion build with a twist, MINION CULL WARPER. This build combines Lightning Warp with enormous Culling Strike Threshold to rapidly warp through maps and instantly kill every normal and magic monster that you or your minions touch. Even rare enemies die at half-life. Witchhunter's Zealous Inquisition explosions can chain for satisfying map clear. It has great single target damage, it has solid defenses with a sorcery ward shield and around 50% evasion. This build is also somewhat of an auto bomber. Without pressing anything, the repulsion aura repeatedly hits enemies in a large radius, spawning more living lightning and Verisium manifestation minions, which loops repeatedly. Repulsion also culls anything it hits, and it's a blast to play. Warping through maps, watching enemies explode feels really good. Sorcery Ward can be hard to track as it's a buff at the top of the screen. It only protects against hits, meaning the build is a bit weak against damage over time. However, Lightning Warp combined with Soul Drain, Life Drain, and Life on Kill provide plenty of sustain while mapping. There's a written guide for this build in the description below. For mapping, the playstyle revolves around scanning the screen for blue orbs. A blue orb means you can Lightning Warp to the enemy, instantly kill it, and every enemy around it. If an enemy in your large curse radius gets hit by any minion, they'll also get culled with repulsion. For rare monsters, cast Frostbomb, then Elemental Weakness. If needed, maybe quickly follow up with an Ember Fusillade to create Raging Spirits on top of the rare. It should die shortly after. Keep it in your curse radius until it gets culled at half-life. For bossing, maintain Elemental Weakness and Exposure while occasionally casting Ember Fusillade for Raging Spirits. Skyfall is great as a damage cooldown right before engaging a boss or dangerous fight. Be aware that Skyfall does have a long cast time and usually won't be castable until there's downtime. Let's take a look at the build's mechanics. The core of this build is Culling Strike, or Cull. Cull will instantly kill enemies under a certain life percentage that you hit with Lightning Warp or Repulsion. At 186% threshold, normal enemies are culled at full life. At 400%, magic enemies are culled at full life. For this build, the goal is to run around 410% threshold to make Lightning Warp mapping as smooth as possible. At 410%, rares get culled around half-life, and uniques at around 25%, although unique cull isn't as reliable. Cull is incredibly powerful. It even completely bypasses enemy defenses such as Delirium damage reduction. Lightning Warp is the bread and butter for mapping. Any enemy with a blue orb is a valid target to warp to. With our massive area of effect, it also sends out a huge pulse of lightning that culls anything nearby. One of our 2 living lightning supports is here to ensure that there are always minions next to us after a warp. Additionally, it leaves a huge area of shocked ground, further boosting follow-up minion damage. Lightning Warp does not have a noticeable range limitation, it's spammable, and it recovers more mana than it costs. Repulsion is a new curse that we combine with Blasphemy, with huge area of effect scaling. Anything in your curse radius that you or your minions hit triggers a repulsion explosion. This does a few things. It summons living lightning minions, which zip around, triggering even more explosions. This then loops and is fully automated. Explosions cull any enemy under the cull threshold. And it summons Verisium manifestation minions. These are temporary physical ranged attack projectile minions that add extra damage, and also help trigger repulsion. Manifestations do not follow you, but they do chase and engage nearby enemies. Be aware that you must have lightning damage to attacks on a ring or perhaps a forked belt for repulsion to trigger living lightning. Skyfall functions as a damage cooldown. Skyfall plus Spell Cascade creates 9 temporary melee minions that follow you around. The cast time is quite long, but it's perfect for precasting right before running into a boss fight. Skyfall typically isn't castable until downtime, as Repulsion will usually keep runic power low. Glory Decay makes it unusable after 15 seconds of downtime, so don't wait too long to cast it. Skyfall isn't required, but the skill is pretty cool. The Spectres we use are powered Zealots, which can be found in the 3rd interlude in Etched Ravine. There are multiple variants, be sure to grab the correct one that actually casts Spark. Zealots are the bulk of single target damage, and they have decent mapping coverage. Here are some useful uniques for the build. myrisuxor is vital. It provides a huge chunk of consistent Culling Strike Threshold. Aim for a corrupted one with at least 115% threshold. Horrorsflight are new gloves that drop from Tangmazu, the pinnacle Delirium boss. Each stack of Fear Incarnate provides 10% Culling Strike Threshold. With a maximum of 20 stacks, these provide 200% Culling Threshold while mapping. These gloves can drop with the Raven Touched mod, which is what we want. Raven Touched allows us to instill Hunting Companion for an additional 20% threshold. Maintaining 20 stacks while mapping is trivial. It'll cap within seconds. This build requires a split personality jewel, either a Sorceress or Templar variant. Sorceress is slightly better, but significantly more expensive. The Heart of the Well jewel can have up to 25% threshold and can come with some other valuable mods too. Lavianja's Spirits is solid as this build's mana costs are quite low, but swap it out if needed. Palm of the Dreamer is a great option for those looking for even more map clear. The Chaos Explosions are very strong, but this item is absurdly expensive. For the Ascendancy, we go Witchhunter. First, Pitiless Killer is the core of the build, granting powerful global Culling Strike. Second, Zealous Inquisition provides mapping explosions that are very large due to AoE scaling. This becomes even stronger during mechanics such as Abyss or Breach as the explode chance is doubled. Last, we grab Obsessive Rituals and Ceremonial Ablution for Sorcery Ward, a big defensive boost. Sorcery Ward is a passive shield that absorbs all hit damage until it runs out. It'll regularly recharge when you stop getting hit or it's depleted. Be aware that Sorcery Ward does not work against damage over time. For those with an absurd amount of currency, an alternative Ascendancy is Disciple of Varashta. With the incredibly expensive Alder's Legacy, extract Culling Strike from the Deathblow gloves, put it into horrorsflight, then run a Palm of the Dreamer weapon swap for mapping explosions. Then use Kalari's command skills to delete rares and bosses. Let's quickly cover some gearing. For the amulet, aim for +3 minion levels and increased evasion. Spirit is fantastic here too. Body armor is the main slot we use to boost Sorcery Ward. Get as much evasion as possible. If you can fit in Spirit too, great, though it's not necessary. A Breach +2 minion level belt is an option, but they tend to be very expensive, so it is skippable. Boots and Focus are where we get the Runic Ward to fuel Verisium Manifestations and Skyfall. Ember Fusillade, with its low cast time, is great at quickly spawning Raging Spirits. The projectiles must hit something to spawn spirits. Either aim it at enemies or a nearby wall. Warding Rune of Bodyguards and the Scepter is reliable onslaught for minions while mapping. On powered Zealot Spectres, Projectile Acceleration 3 is the damage loss due to their spark having reduced projectile speed. Be sure to run Projectile Acceleration 2. Don't forget to get lightning damage to attacks on a ring so that repulsion spawns living lightning minions. A minion melee splash belt may be useful as it'll give Raging Spirits, Living Lightning, and Skyfall minions splash damage. For serious pinnacle bosses, consider swapping out the myrisuxor for a +2 minion level helmet with high evasion. Click like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. As always, thanks for watching.